Season of Discovery is right around the corner, so today I want to talk about a class and a role that I'm very excited to play, and that is a rogue tank. Most of my WoW career, I've played a rogue. Through retail, I was mythic raiding, I played it on classic, and when I wasn't playing a rogue, I was tanking. So I am super excited to bring these two together and see what we can do as a rogue tank. You know, the meme of evasion tanking has always been a thing. We've seen rogue tanks on patchwork because of their avoidance mixed with the marbles. We've seen some meme rogue tanks, but I want to see a real rogue tank in action. So I'm super excited for it. So today I want to talk about the pros and cons of a rogue tank, the runes you take, your best in slot, your easily obtainable best in slot, what race you want to play, and things of that nature. So I made a video before and it was 50 minutes. I'm going to try to do this one in a lot less time. So starting off, let's talk about the pros and cons of a rogue tank. First, they're a very unique tank. They're parry tanks. We've never seen this before. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how a parry tank fits into different raid comps, dungeon comps, how they fight against certain bosses, when they're going to be used more than others, and when they're not going to be used. I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic to see play out. Next is high damage. Rogues are typically high DPS classes, and in Classic, your tank is usually the tankiest DPS in the group. Now, rogues are going to be extremely tanky, and they're going to be very high damage, so bringing them to dungeons is going to feel like bringing a 4th DPS. Bringing them to raids, they're going to be very high damage, single target raid tank, and because they're parry tanks, they're going to be able to pop Riposte on cooldown, and Riposte is one of the best damaging spells for its cost in the game. So they're going to bring a lot of damage to the tank roll, and it's going to be very beneficial. They're also going to be able to generate a lot of threat. Most people don't know that rogues passively generate about 20% less threat with their actions than a lot of other DPS classes, and even then, we still see them high on the threat meter. We still see them pulling aggro off warriors. We still see that they need to control their threat. Now, combo that with their rune they get, that's going to massively increase their threat generation. It's going to be very hard to pull off a rogue. Next, they eventually become untouchable. It might not be at level 25, but there's been some crazy gear combinations towards endgame, towards Blackwing Lair, that rogues just become untouchable. They have 100% plus avoidance, and any physical patchwork style tank, they are going to be optimal. You're not going to take a different tank to a patchwork fight because that rogue tank's just not going to get hit. So your healers are just going to be able to DPS. You know, they're not going to worry about it because you're never getting hit. And granted, that's far off and things might change with avoidance because it's Season of Discovery, but as of right now, that's the thing. Next, they have very good utility. They have Kidney Shot, they have Cheap Shot, they have Blind, they have Gouge. They're going to be able to open fights with Sap, because right now when you send a rogue out, he saps, comes out of stealth, and now the tank has to grab that target. But now the rogue's going to be the tank, so he's going to be able to sap and then initiate the fight. They also have Distract. If you're fighting a pack and a patrol's coming, you're going to be able to throw that distract out, hold the patrol off, and finish the pull. Now, rogues have had this utility forever, but they've only had it in a damage roll. So it's going to be interesting to see how they utilize it in a tank roll. Do you gouge for a half second of downtime? Do you blind targets that are running away as opposed to taunting them? And I'm looking forward to see how people do pulls with a tank that has so much CC. Next, they're energy based. So they're never going into a fight with no rage. They're going in, they have max energy. If you time it right, they can bang out a Sinister Strike, Sinister Strike, Sinister Strike, Blade Dance. Rapid fire these 4 things, get Snap Threat pretty easily, and get the fight going. You never have to worry about they have no rage, they can't Sunder, they can't Heroic Strike, they can't Bloodthirst, they can't do anything. You know, they can't swipe, they can't maul. You go in there, you always have max energy. And I think that's something that's going to be really good at starting the fight and holding on early on, because that's where you lose threat the most. Lastly, they're going to be very fast hitting tanks. Now, you think of rogues, you think of a slow main hand, a fast offhand, you get slice and dice, and you're kind of ripping. You're just hitting pretty quickly. What I haven't seen in any other video is people talking about the parried reduced swing time. So what happens when you parry an attack is your swing time is reduced by 40%. So if you have a 2-second swing time sword and you parry an attack, that's going to cut the swing time down to about 1.2 seconds, which means you're going to attack faster. So rogues being a parry tank and having, 2 or 3 mobs in front of them, you're going to be parrying a ton, which means your main hand is just going to be firing off every second. And whatever swing time you have on your main hand, is essentially going to be cut in half. So I think that's something people underestimate with how fast their white hits are actually going to go, because you're going to have a 1.8 second dagger in the offhand, and your main hand's going to be hitting faster. And it's just going to be a machine gun of white hits. So I'm pumped to see that play out, because I don't think anyone's ever talked about that. And anybody who's played a warrior knows that when you get parried, that your swing time cuts. So I'm really excited to see that in action. Next, we have cons. Now, I love the idea of rogue tanking, but I'm not blind to the cons of rogue tanking, okay? One is they're very ability reliant. You need to keep these maintenance abilities up, or you can find yourself in trouble. Blade Dance is one of our number one abilities that we need to keep up at all times, because it gives us a 20% damage reduction. If that drops, we can be hit very hard. So you need to make sure that you are keeping that up, you are keeping main gouch up, or gauche, or however you say it. We'll talk about these more. These are runes that you're going to get. But you need to keep these abilities up and ticking in order to be an efficient tank, because those are your bread and butter. Next, you can't wear a shield. Now, I know a lot of warriors typically don't wear shields, but having that ability to pop one on when things go bad is definitely nice to have. And we won't have that. So we need to make sure that we are in control of what's going on at all times. Next, AoE threat. AoE threat is going to be very difficult. I think we're going to excel in single target tanking, but AoE threat, even when we get Blade Flurry, is not going to be optimal, because Blade Flurry hits one extra target and you have a 2-minute cooldown. So you're not going to be able to have that up all the time. What I think we're going to have to do is riposte different targets, because we're parrying all the time. Riposte will always be up. You just have to wait that 6-second cooldown. So I think riposte is going to be our tab target move to keep threat on a pack. Now, the downside to that, which is my last con, is that combo points don't jump. This is kind of a big one. Because your combo points are on your target and not on you like they are in retail, when you switch, you lose those combo points. So you're going to need to weave Blade Dance with 3+ combo points into riposting different targets and tab targeting. And I think it's going to be tough, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun to get down. And in dungeons, you're probably going to open up with Cheap Shot, get a couple combo points and Blade Dance, and hope that that lasts the entire pull. But if it doesn't, you're going to need to be able to weave efficiently, build combo points, and get Blade Dance up, and then weave again. So that's going to be interesting to see how it works, and it's definitely going to be tough to do. So those are my pros and cons for the rogue tank. If I missed some big pros or big cons, leave a comment below, because I'm curious to see how other people are viewing rogue tanks. Next, we have which race are we going to play. Now, I plan on playing Horde. I played a lot of Alliance all through Hardcore, so I kind of want to change things up. And for Horde, there's only 3 different races you can be. It's Orc, Troll, and Undead. Now, out of these 3, they all have different racials that benefit differently, and they have different niches. So we're going to go through and talk about the pros and cons of each racial. For Orc, you have axe specialization. Skill with axes and two-handed axes increased by 5. Now, this is usually why people would pick Orc. However, Blizzard came out and said they're going to add more items with plus skill or plus hit chance earlier in the game, so that this won't be a lock. You won't have to play Orc in order to be a good tank or a good DPS. So it's good, but it's not as crucial as it was in the past. Next, we have Blood Fury. Increases base melee attack power by 25% for 15 seconds, but reduces healing effects on you by 50% for 25 seconds. This is really good if you're a damage class, and probably really bad if you're a tank, because as much avoidance as we have, we're still going to get hit. And you don't want your healers working overtime because you wanted a little more damage. Next, we have Command. Increases damage done by Hunter and Warlock pets by 5%. That's irrelevant. Next, we have Hardiness. Chance to resist stun effects increased by an additional 25%. Now, your base chance is 5%. So in total, Orcs have a 30% chance to resist stuns. This is massive for PvP. It's got some niche plays in PvE. So depending on what you're doing is going to determine if this is really, really good or kind of okay. Next, we have Troll. Beast Slaying. Damage dealt versus Beast increased by 5%. Obviously, it's got some niches in PvE, but generally it's overlooked. Berserking. Increase your casting and attack speed by 10% up to 30%. At full health, the speed increase is 10%, with a greater effect up to 30 if you are badly hurt when activating. I think this is going to be a very good tank racial, because when you do get hit, you can pop this and get the full benefit from it. If you're playing an orc, you have to be very, very careful with when you pop Blood Fury. But with a troll, when you get hit, now is your time to shine. You pop Berserk Ring and you get that 30% attack speed. That paired with the parry reduced swing time, you're going to be hitting so quickly. Next, we have bow and throwing specialization. We're going to skip over those because we typically only do that to pull. And lastly, we have regeneration. Health regeneration rate increased by 10%, and 10% of your total health regen may continue during combat. Now this is at face value very good. However, the regen isn't substantial. It's not going to let you solo things. You're not going to survive without a healer, but any kind of passive health regeneration is always good for a tank. Lastly, we have Undead. Cannibalize. When activated, regenerate 7% of total health every 2 seconds for 10 seconds. Only works on humanoid or undead corpses. Any movement, action, or damage taken while cannibalizing will cancel the effect. This is really good when you're solo questing or doing open world content, but other than that, it doesn't really have a role in raid or dungeons. Shadow resistance. Increase shadow resistance by 10. People were worried about getting hit with spell damage. Well, you get a little resistance. Granted, we'll probably see the least benefit from the shadow resistance this early on. We would see more from frost or fire or even nature, but nonetheless, 10 shadow resistance is always something. Underwater breathing. Underwater breath lasts 300% longer than normal. Maybe it's good in PvE. It might have a little benefit in Black Fathom Deeps, but not enough to make you pick a race. Will of the Forsaken. Provides immunity to charm, fear, and sleep while active. May also be used while already affected by charm, fear, or sleep. Lasts 5 seconds. This is probably single-handedly the best PvP racial out of these 3 races. That's why you saw so many undead rogues during the Makara tournament. If you're planning on doing a lot of PvP, undead is probably your best bet, with orc close behind due to the stun resist. But being able to pop that and save your PvP trinket for another time is kind of massive. So overall, orcs look like they're best for damage, good for solo questing, good for PvP, and overall a good pick. Trolls seem like they have the best tanking racials, good for solo questing, no PvP advantage, and kind of a niche pick. And then you have Undead, who's the worst for damage because they don't have anything that increases it. They're good for solo questing because of Cannibalize, and they're probably the best for PvP, and still kind of a niche pick. So for me, I'm thinking of going Troll. I like the troll animations kind of the most, the female one specifically. They got a cool backhand finisher. But if you're going to PvP, it's probably Undead or Orc. If you're going to tank, it's probably Troll. And if you're just going to DPS, it's easily Orc. In Season of Discovery, they're introducing a rune system. This will let you put different runes on different pieces of gear to change the playstyle of your class. For rogue tanks, it's pretty cut and dry what runes we're taking. Starting with legs, we're going to go with Blade Dance. Finishing move that increases your parry chance, lasts longer and grants more parry chance per combo point. So at 1 point, you get 14 seconds of 6% increased parry, and at 5 combo points, you get 30 seconds of 10% increased parry. Okay, so this is something you're going to want to keep up at all times. Next, we have Just a Flesh Wound. This is going to go on the chest. You take 20% reduced physical damage while Blade Dance is active. That's the rune we just looked at. Additionally, you have 6% reduced chance to be critically hit by melee attacks. That's huge because all tanks are now crit immune from raid bosses. And the threat generated by all your actions is massively increased. And your feint ability is replaced with Tease, which taunts the target. So now we have a taunt. It's a 10-second cooldown. There's no energy cost to it, and we have a taunt. That's going to be great for grabbing mobs that are running away from the group. Lastly, we're going to go main gauche, main gouche. It's a French word. I took Spanish. What this move does is instantly strike with your offhand for normal offhand damage and increases your chance to parry by 10% for 10 seconds. It has a 20-second cooldown. There's going to be a 10-second gap between when the buff wears off and when you can do it again. So you kind of want to use it on CD, but you also want to prep it if you know that big damage is coming or you're pulling a big group of mobs in a little bit. You want to hang on to it so you can get max parry chance. Main Gouge also benefits from all talents and effects that trigger or modify Sinister Strike. So improved Sinister Strike will reduce this to 30 energy, which is going to make it a lot easier to use. So those are the runes you're going to run. Next, we're going to move on to the best in slot list. Now, I have some qualms with the best in slot list. I see a lot of people posting this. They go to 60Upgrades, they put the absolute best in slot in each slot, and they say, this is what you need. Well, it's not always the case. And I say that because some of the gear, like Humbert's Helm, is unachievable if you're Alliance. Deep Dive Helmet requires 230 engineering. You need to be 35 to get that. Lucky Fishing Hat. You need to win the STV fishing tourney. It's not hard, but it's something that a lot of people probably won't want to take the time to do. So then you have the Ringed Helm, which is 4th best helm, and it's from Garnag Charskull, 29 rare in the wetland. This is attainable. This is something that you can do. It's not the best, but it's not bad. 7 agility, 8 stam, or 8 stam, 7 spirit. So you lose a little bit of agility, but your stam is still there. So when looking at this best in slot guide, I noticed that some of these items that they were saying is the best in slot, or the second best, or third best, was just unattainable or unlikely due to the level cap. So what I did was I took this whole list and I went through each and every top 5 items for neck, for shoulders, for cloak, chest, all the way down, and I created the 25 easily obtainable best in slot list. Now this is the Ringed Helm from a 29 rare, Scout's Medallion from Warsong Outriders, which is Warsong Gulch Rep, you need to be honored, leatherworking shoulders, Keep of the Brotherhood, Black and Fias armor, both from Deadmites, all easily doable things. Leaders of the Fang is a horde quest, so if you're Alliance, sorry. Scout's Blade is from revered Warsong Outriders, again, easy, leatherworking. Last Boss in Wailing Caverns, some Warsong supply quest. So this list is stuff that the average player can get when he hits 25. You typically don't need a group for a lot of these things unless we're talking about dungeons, which is going to be easier to find. I'm talking about finding a group to go do, a level 35 elite. People are going to do it, but it's going to be tough. So this is for the average player who wants to log in and wants to get really good gear. Now, granted, it's not the best, but I put these all into 60 upgrades because I wanted to see how my easily obtainable best in slot list would hold up in a tanking scenario. So this is all the gear. I will also share this link in the description below. Now, granted, some things like Arena Grandmaster, it's going to be very hard to get, but it's less hard, it's more time consuming. So that being said, all this gear is obtainable. It's not going to be, some of this is leatherworking. You get the gist. Let's look at how it holds up. Armor, it's at a 24% damage reduction. Now, if we go back to the runes, we see that just a flesh wound gives you a 20% physical damage reduction while Blade Dance is up. So this damage reduction becomes 44%. Okay, 44%. Now total avoidance, I'm at 39%. With Blade Dance up, that becomes 49%. With Main Gouge up, that becomes 59%. So with my easily obtainable best in slot list, you are sitting roughly at 60% total avoidance with all your moves going, and with all your maintenance up, you're sitting at 49% avoidance and 44% damage reduction. So let's take a look at one of my other characters who's a warrior, who I just did an autofill, and this guy's got pretty stacked gear, defense gear, a lot of stam, a lot of armor. He is stacked. He would be a good warrior in a group. He is showing 39% damage reduction. It's not wearing a shield. Most warriors won't. So he has less damage reduction than my rogue will have while he's running Blade Dance. Total avoidance is 22%. My rogue's going to be sitting at 49%. So looking at this, I am very excited to get my rogue geared and get him in front of some bosses, raid or dungeon, and see how well he actually holds up, because I think they're going to be pumpers. I think they're going to be very underrated for how good they're going to be. Lastly, I want to do talent builds. Talent builds for a tank. It's going to be the Just a Flesh Wound, Blade Dance, and Main Gouge. Okay, you only have 16 points here, so you want to get the best use of them. You only have 16 points. This is the build that I'm going to go. 2 in Sinister Strike. I'm going to fill out Lightning Reflexes. The order in which you do them is up to you. Then I'm going to go 5 in Deflection, 1 in Riposte, and 2 in Endurance, because evasion is going to put you at or above that 100% avoidance. So you're just not going to get hit there. So So having a reduced cooldown on that is going to be crucial. Now I have 1 point left. You can kind of free float it anywhere you want. Personally, I'm going to go into precision solely so that I can get ahead of the game to work into dual wield specialization, because if you put it here, you put it here or here, you still got to put 1 point there anyways. So this is the build I'm going to be running. I'm going to be putting points into it as I'm leveling, so I don't need to spend a gold to respec. And this is what I'm going to raid with. Now, with all that being said, I think we finally come to an end with the video. We've gone over pros and cons, we've gone over races, we've gone over runes, we've gone over best in slots, and we rounded off with talents. Now, if you liked the video, like the video, and leave a comment below if you want to see more Season of Discovery content. This is my first WoW video in a long time, and I'm thinking about coming back into it for Season of Discovery, so leave a comment below if you want to see more videos. And until then, I look forward to seeing you all in Season of Discovery.